He's lost all his power.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Oh, you've been recording for 2 minutes.
Been holding this against you.
All right. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We are, as the kids say, we are raw dogging it tonight. I'm on my third laptop tonight. My computer's died. I didn't bring my work laptop. Andrew's off his phone, Andrew Handyside, and Nathan is in Perth, looking east, of course, of all that Perth people do, in a hotel on hotel Wi-Fi in East Perth. Nathan, what's the view from over there? Can you see our ivory towers?
I can see like a river. I don't know what river it is, but I can see a river barely. But yeah, this sort of sums up the drop kicker, doesn't it? Where, they were saying before we went on air, my hotel Wi-Fi, no mic, is probably the best setup out of the three we have. But hey, we know you listen for our opinions, not our setup.
Yeah, our amazing opinions. And Andrew, how's the Queensland Wi-Fi doing over there?
Look, it holds up okay on the phone. We've had zero success with the laptop over the last couple of weeks, so I just go to the phone. So it works. It does the job.
Yes, perfect. So as Nathan said, you'll come for our amazing opinions. We, of course, the Dropped Kickoff. You can follow us on Twitter or at the Dropped Kickoff. Just look us up. We've got a range of amazing opinions. This week, again, we were without our dear leader, Nick Vasiliev, who I think is in Japan for another week yet. He's chosen the correct time to escape Australia after that game on the weekend. Now, Andrew, Nathan, you always go to these games because it's your job, but Andrew, you went because you live in Brisbane. How was the game, just quickly?
I live and breathe Brisbane. Look, the Springboks are a formidable challenge. They're dual defending world champions for a reason, and that was just obvious on the sidelines. It just, as much as Australia played admirably, they defended a lot, and their set piece was fair to serviceable. There was just sort of an obvious gulf between the two teams. Like South Africa were just too big, too fast, too well drilled, too smart, and Australia was just out there playing sort of fiddlesticks, and just it honestly, it could have been a lot worse than it was.
Which is unfair enough. And from my perspective, I'm just going to add to that as well. Like everyone sort of wants to panic after one loss and say, we got to blow it up again, and everyone has sort of come out of the woodworks to criticise. But it's like this South African team is just unreal. That was my sort of first-hand opinion to back up what Andy was saying. Like the way they were clinical, they gave the Wallabies next to no chances. Their pressure was smothering and forced some panic decisions that just ultimately came back to haunt them. And yeah, this is a team which is at a completely different cycle in terms of where they are as a team compared to us, and it showed.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's anything ashamed to to come out of that game. We're ranked 9th, I think, playing the team that's ranked 1st and won 2 World Cups in a row. So I don't think it's any shame.
No.
But yeah, we got out monstered. Just talking about the review today, obviously the teams came out. So let's go through the teams. And as we go through the teams, talk about the game on the weekend as well. I'm sure talking teams were supposed to do a review. So we've just swapped. So we're going to do the preview. They're going to do the review. So look out for their review early next week. I'm not sure if they did one this week. I checked. But that's a plan. Anyway, moving forward, let's quickly get into it. So let's just do the first half. Not many changes in the squad overall, except forced ones. The forward pack, we got monstered. They had a lot of heart. I don't think we can take that away from them, but definitely out monstered. But damn, am I happy to see Angus Bell back. Now, Andrew, you're a Queenslander, but you got to admit he's the best loose head in Australia, isn't he?
He's good. He's earned his spot. Look, no qualms from me about Angus Bell pulling on the number 1 jersey. Like you said, the forward Scott, they played their best and they got monstered. So if there was changes to be made when people like Angus Bell are available, it's only it's only a smart thing to do to bring them. They're probably not going to make the difference, but it is a sensible change, and he's been a good player for a long time, and he's definitely earned his spot. So, so I know my little tagline tonight is only 8 Reds, but look, realistically, yeah, look, he's earned his spot. I'm happy he's back.
Yes, Nathan, were you going to interject just then?
I was just going to say, he's one of those just unicorn front rowers that can do it all, really. Like, an excellent scrummer, is like has above average to elite speed for his position. You know, even put a kick and chase in and got it back for himself. Like, he's one of those world-class players that you can build a team around, and you can sort of, when you sort of compare ourselves to the South Africans and French, and they go, oh, well, they've got DuPont, they've got, you know, Khaleesi, Etsybeth, these type of players. Well, who do we have? Who do we have that could really make a difference and turn a game? And Angus is one of them.
And the other person would be Taniela Tupou, who hasn't been picked again due to a death in the family, which is good and great, actually. It's good to be reminded that this is not the be-all and end-all. And obviously condolences to him. Now, not to go through position by position, but the next person on the number list is an interesting one, Josh Nasser. So I guess maybe, Nathan, I'll go to you. He hasn't really impressed me. Obviously, he's one for the future, but do you want to talk a bit about this, Puka?
Yeah,
choice?
So it's an interesting one. And I sort of asked Joe the question today, and he was very clear that it's not he's impressed with Josh's scrummaging ability. Like, I think he likes that he's, spent a lot of his time as a prop going through the system at Queensland. He has that base, and I think he thinks that sort of skill can transfer well to the type of front row he wants out in the field. And Matt Fessner's been a consistent player from this entire time, but he just sort of wanted to see a different look. And I think Josh has always been a solid scrummager, if not great. The problem is you need to see that line out throwing be a bit more consistent. And if he can do that, then we're going to be in business. Because one of the things which I think was flown under the radar from last week is just how many opportunities we had in their 22 or a positive sort of line out chances that we either overthrew or just did nothing with. So NASA's got to be big around just that accuracy and actually hitting the mark, driving that rolling maul and turning those great field position opportunities into points.
Absolutely. Now, Andrew, I know you're a proud Queenslander, quite obviously, but we got Josh Nasser and Zane Nongor. Look, I haven't been wowed. I'd like to be wowed. I like to be wrong, and I want to be wowed. But are you? How excited are you for these two? Do you think they're the real deal, or would you admit that's your Reds bias?
I'll say I will feed it a little bit into my Reds bias. Throughout the season for the Reds, it was actually a bit disappointing that our lineup was a little bit faltering on the weekend, because that had been a real strength at the Queensland Reds this year, is just the accuracy with the line-out throws and just sort of smart calls. And, they pinched a couple of line-outs against that Welsh touring team. It had kind of been a strength of Queensland. Like, oh, okay, this is just... And it feeds into this sense of just kind of sensible rugby. You can practice just hundreds and thousands of line-out throws. You're not going to... It's not like collision training where you've got sort of an upper limit on it. It's something you can just repeat until you get really good at it. So it was a little bit disappointing to loop back to what Nathan said before, that those opportunities were missed. So look, Josh Nasser has been good as part of a really good Reds pack this year in Super Rugby. Has he shown that same level going to Test Rugby? I'm going to say no, he has not yet. And I think Zane Nongor's somebody else who's falling into that promising, and I'm glad they're part of the national setup. And I think there was some talk about him in the chat the other week and all of the work that he does off the ball, the sort of unrewarded stuff. But again, I think he falls under that umbrella of there's the potential there, but they haven't yet shown it. And against a team like South Africa, there's no... It's harder to do that, to have those moments of brilliance, just because they are so clinical and smothering.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so kind of moving on. Alan Alatoa at tight head. So starting locks. Angus, Angus Blythe and LSL. I'm guessing they probably know each other a bit from Queensland. Angus Blythe is another one who's kind of in my bucket of why. Jeremy Williams, if I got his name right, I feel like I got his name wrong. And Nick Frost out with injury, so that's why he partly had to come in. Nathan or Andy, cool with this? Any alarm bells? Any positive bells?
I mean, it's one of those things with Angus, he brings size, and that's what you need against South Africans. You need that sort of raw, frame to sort of help sort of show up that set piece game, and I think that's what he brings. But yeah, obviously this is sort of an Australian side which is dealing with a bit of injuries in that sort of second row group. Will Skelton hopefully to come back sometime this year. Will obviously strengthen that as well. But yeah, I mean, Angus Blythe would have played last week. I think he had an infection that just kept him out. So this is going to be an ultimate test of, all right, how good are you? And I think Ryan Smith would have also been in contention, but he's just had a child. So congratulations to him and his partner. So it's just a case of Angus Blythe gets his chance against some of the best in the world. So let's see how he goes.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned. Sorry, can I butt in for a second? We're talking to Queenslander here. We're talking Queensland here.
Your blood's spiking. Yeah.
I'm getting all heads up. I'm glad Nathan mentioned Ryan Smith. Ryan Smith, Angus Blythe are two of these guys. I think you talked about the other week on the pod, Nathan, the Scott Fardy kind of character that just get in and just smash rucks and just be a pest and disrupt lineouts and go through mauls. Angus Blythe is definitely one of those players. I think he is underrated for what he brings in that he's just a mongrel of a lock, just getting in and just being a pest and hitting, hard tackling and getting in the way at lineouts and, holding up his side of the scrum. I think, I think it's a little bit of a disservice to sort of scratch your head too much about it. But, of course, I'm bringing a big Queensland bias to this, but he's another guy that you go watch a game live and he does that work that you just don't see on the stats sheet. Hopefully he's another one of these people that rises to this challenge. He's been thrown in the deep end. Show us how good you are against the best 4-pack in the world. So good luck to him. But if he plays to his potential, if he plays like he has been, I think there'll be a lot of people who the other side of this will go, actually, you know what? He is a genuine contender amongst a very good group of second rows that Australia Rugby has at the moment.
Okay, strong opinion. I'm not so sure I agree with it, but very strong. I like it. Let's move on to the back row. So this has stayed the same. Rob Valentini at blindside. Carlo, open side, Harry Wilson, number 8, Carlo Tizzano, of course, WA product, Nathan. I'm sure you've been seeing his face everywhere in Perth. Look, I think this is probably the closest, a really good back row. I mean, with Fraser McBride out, this is probably the closest we can get. The one thing I would have said that's missing from the Australian side is, Nathan, you'll hate me saying it, but you know who I'm going to say who should be in this back row, ideally, if you could pick overseas players. But Carlo Tizzano brings that mongrel. And if he can control the mongrel, that's what we need, because it's what we're missing.
The S word, you mean?
The S word. And the L word before it. Look, you just said, Andy, this is the best forward pack in the world. Maybe even the best backpack as well. And you can't really, look, you can only do your best against an unstoppable force. But look, I thought they did pretty well on the weekend, these back three. If you had to pick a best of team between the Springboks and the Wallabies, I would say Rob Valentini would get into that best of. I don't know if you boys, we can talk this right now. If you have any picks from the Australian team, get that box team. But I think it's good. It's good. The stability is good. And I'd like to see these guys progress. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'd agree with Valentini. I think he's just one of the best number 8s in the world currently, or one of the best back rowers going in the world right now. And he showed that on the weekend as one of the better players out there. Likewise, Carlo Tizzano proved that he can match at test level. I still need to see more from Harry Wilson. Like, he's a great, he looks great in the stat sheet and looks great sort of with his runs and all that, but it's just, I need to see a bit more of that dirty work. Like, it's one of those things, if you're going to be, like, Rob Valentini brings that explosiveness and brings that power and all that sort of stuff. Carlo or Fraser, whoever that is over a breakdown. I need to see what Harry's edge is, that athleticism and being able to break a game open. I need to see that from him a bit more this week. Otherwise, like when Liam Wright comes back in, if he's just going to play, if he's playing that exact same role of just, taking those hit ups and managing a game that way, Liam Wright's a much better player at that role. So this is a real case for Harry Wilson to be like, no, I'm a athletic freak. Let me show off what I can do. Let me try and get into space and throw the offload out the back and do all this sort of stuff and actually have an imprint on the game. Because, if Liam Wright's back in, the way this is sort of transpired, I would be leaning towards bringing him back in at 6 and Valentini at 8. With maybe Harry Wilson coming off the bench.
Now, Andy, a lot of Queenslanders just got mentioned. I'm sure you're bursting at the seams.
No, look, that's fair. But I do wonder too, I was having a think about this because they've got Nick White starting, that sort of White and McDermott on the bench kind of thing where, McDermott's one of those guys on the bench that, well, no, we're not talking about the bench yet, but, he can really sort of change the game once it sort of starts, the people start to tire and it starts to open up. And Harry Wilson's been a little bit in that mold. Like, he's at super rugby level, he's a good number 8. And then when it does start to drift a little bit towards the end, that's when you see him doing these like breakout 16-meter runs and getting those charge downs and things like that, these extra little bits that he brings. And I just wonder if the South African style of play is too stifling and we just didn't give him the opportunities, or those opportunities just didn't present for him to show. Like, when did he have an opportunity to show his sort of athletic prowess and his ball handling prowess that he didn't then do? He just sort of got belted every time he got the ball, from what I could see.
But I think everyone did. Like, the South Africans are just too fucking good. And they're all somehow, 2 inches taller and wider than any other team. And their body fat percentage is also 2 percentage points lower than any other team, it seems. But that too. And I don't know, Andy, if you saw that photo a couple of years ago. I know, Nathan, you would have seen it, where they were all just flexing with their shirts off. I think it was from the last World Cup. And
Nathan, was that your
insane? It's just
Nathan,
insane,
was that your phone background you were showing me on the weekend?
You weren't meant to see that. You weren't meant to see that. He photoshopped himself in the background. But they're freaks. They're freaks. I'm not casting any aspersions, but they're just freaks. And look, like we said, they're well drilled. That was Carlo Tizzano's first test in the weekend. Give it more time and they can find those holes and they don't just run into a brick wall. That's my feelings. And also, I just want to say, Harry Wilson, it says in the, Nathan, you wrote it up, the squad list today, Gunnedah Red Devils. Gunnedah's in New South Wales. Just want to, I haven't brought it up on the pod yet, but I got called a self-assessed, not self-obsessed, a self-assessed wanker for bringing that up by some dude on Twitter. They're saying he's from New South Wales. Andy, you can't speak.
We're back to this, are we?
Andy was that man. Canada, that's in Queensland.
Yeah.
Queensland's everywhere.
Yeah. Andy, you can't speak. So moving on, let's go on to the back. So again, like before we get into the halves, I don't think it was a big difference. A lot of people poo-pooing Noah. Personally, I'm not a fan of him, but I don't think changing him out for anyone would have changed anything. It's not like we can take him out, bring in Richie Mo'unga. But the halves, so Jake Gordon, who has had a fucking fantastic year. He played in a shit team, the Waratahs, and still shone. We were talking about like what players would you have in a combined South African and Australian 11? I mentioned Rob Valentini. Valentini doesn't have a bad game. Jake Gordon doesn't have a bad game. He had a bit of a shocker on the weekend, but he was just playing to the tactics that the coach put out. If you've watched Ireland under Joe Schmidt, that's all he's doing, and wants to keep his job, being told what to do. But I still think he's a fantastic player. But he's out. Nick White's back in. Shame that Faf de Klerk isn't back in. Good old matchup. Nathan, before you're talking about MMA or something, I'd love to see this in future in the same way that Tanner Bill Williams in boxing. But Nick White, Noah Lolosio in the halves. Any comments, any disagreements with what I just said? Andy, I guess you can go first.
Look, I'm a fan of Nick White. I think the Nick White, Tate McDermott halves combination for that first 60, final 20, or first 50, final 30 has been really good for Australia. I think Nick White's that kind of clinical distributor at the base that he probably has over Tate, and then Tate's got that a little bit of that X factor when he comes on later. So I'm happy to see Nick White. Yeah, Jake Gordon did not, as much as it might have been tactics, his box kicking in some of the earlier tests this year was phenomenal. And then on the weekend, we just sort of seemed to be just kicking it back to them, just box kicks that weren't contestable or weren't deep. He just didn't seem to have a good game.
But we were playing a lot better team.
Yes, we were. But yeah, I'm happy to see Nick White back. I am a fan of his. And Noah Loloseo, like I said, we don't have a Richie Mo'unga to just sort of parachute in. Like, let's develop the guy. 20 tests. He's got a long way to go. And actually chatting to him on Friday before the test, he has a real appreciation of that too in himself, like just how far he's come from sort of first 15 rugby through Super Rugby to international rugby, and just how he understands how much he's got to improve, which is good to hear those players that we've sort of been like, is this the next, are they the savior? To sort of appreciate that they've actually, they're going to keep putting the work in. So let's hope the Fords have got to lay the platform for them, but fingers crossed that those boys have a fun afternoon.
Just a couple of notes on that as well. With Jake Gordon, like, my understanding is he copped a head knock from that game, from last week's game. He had the massive bandage, and given his history with concussion as well, like his deal in France was torn up as a result of it. I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a case of just resting him as well. And on the halves as well, I think there's a point Andy just made towards the end there. Like, you show me a 9, or show me a 10 or even a 9 behind a pack that's going backwards that is shone, or that it can really make a difference and show his entire arsenal of skills. Like, it doesn't happen. When you're going backwards constantly, it is a struggle. And yeah, the box kicking wasn't as precise, and the kicking in general wasn't as precise, but that's a lesson about just how to handle the sort of rush defence that Springboks had, and the presence of your Etzebeth and these type of characters that can, position themselves one out from a ruck and get you in your face instantly. So your angle is automatically just has gone from, being nearly half the field to just being this tiny corner that you just have to get it out rather than let's try and find distance. So it was a rough game for both of them in terms of just getting themselves onto it, but it absolutely, you got to keep Noah in this situation just to see how he sort of bounces back and how he can, rally. And having a guy like Nick White next to him, who's, a veteran of the test scene, played with him a lot at the Brumbies, like it's the right move with Jake out.
Yeah, absolutely. That as well. They know each other very well. And kind of continuing as well, like Tate McDermott, I think he's fantastic coming on in that back half of games because he does have that X factor. Maybe not the tactical strength that Jake Gordon has, and maybe even Nick White, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, if you've got your role to play and you can execute it, that's fantastic. I mean, Malcolm Marks, one of the best hookers in the world, comes on, is always on the bench. So I don't think it's a bad thing, and I wish really people would stop focusing on that. Like, the best player has to start, or if they play really well, you have to start.
I think the game's
yeah.
I think the game's evolved beyond. It's not a 15-a-side game. It is 23-a-side. So there's definitely guys like Tate that are going to carve out impressive careers on the bench, not because he's not a good player, but because he is an incredible player in those last 15, 20 minutes when he can shine.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, let's talk about the centers. Centers have changed, stayed the same, Hunter Paisami and Len Ikatel. Again, Lenny Katau's again one of our best players. Hunter Paisami, I think, did he get, Nathan, correct me if I'm wrong, got injured maybe a year or two ago? Or broke his arm, I think.
Yeah, it's like he definitely got a concussion when these two teams played 2 years ago, but has also dealt with some sort of other setbacks as well.
Yeah, I feel like he's lost a bit of his edge since then. I remember he was carving maybe the last year of Brad Thorne's stewardship of the Reds. But I guess, Andy, am I wrong here, or am I full of shit? Or I mean, you seem watch him play a lot more than I do.
He's another one that's falling into this, just like more so than some of the others we talked about earlier. We know he can do more than he's shown so far, I think, in what he's done, at least this year in Test rugby. Like, we know he can do those damaging tackles and just those line-bending runs. Like, we've seen him do it so many times. But is this a side effect of this smothering style of play from the Springboks and, developing halves combinations? Like, does he shine a little bit more at the Reds? Because the level is not Test level, and also those guys just play together a lot, and he can insert himself into or through the defensive line, sort of not at will, but yeah, I would like to see more out of him because I know he can do it. We've seen him do it, and yeah,
certainly,
yeah, and yeah, Len Nicotau, big, as much as he wears the wrong colored jersey week to week, yeah, another. I'm a fan of him. He's just solid. He's just good out there. He's a good 13.
Yeah, great. So moving on, we're getting close to the end. The back three. So big positive here. Marika Korobete's gone back in again. Another Springbok nemesis. I think that his tackle. Remember in the Adelaide Test where he ran across the field and tackled? Was it Kurtley? Mapimpi. I didn't actually know it was happening, and I was watching TV. Like, when you're at the game, a lot of times you're like, what was that? I've got no idea. But I was watching TV, I had no idea what happened, and had to watch the replay to see him play, and it was almost like a superhero moment. Him just finding him and tackling him. And for some reasons, the South Africans thought that was bullshit. But great to see him back. I think, obviously he didn't get picked last Test, but probably because he was a bit undercooked from playing in Japan, which I believe is their off-season at the moment. But Nolan Marika, he probably was sprinting around the block for 7 days straight to get fit again.
Marika's the type of guy that would literally have like a packet of darts and 6 beers and come on the field and still be best on the ground. Like, the man is a scientific freak. Seriously, it's incredible what that man can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I follow him on Instagram too, and he loves his wife, and it's just so normal. Like, he doesn't have a supermodel wife, and they're not just at restaurants taking photos like the rest of the players. He's like, oh yeah, went down to the fish and chip shop.
It's just a normal. He's a normal bloke, but he's just built of like steel. It's incredible.
Yeah, I love him. So he's playing a Dagunu. What did Dagunu do?
Fractured fibula.
So how long is he out for? 6 weeks?
At a minimum, yeah. 6 to 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, shit. So Marika's in for him. Kellaway on the other wing, and Tom Wright. I think Kellaway as well. Because he carved when he came back, and I just don't. It's kind of my summer situation. Like, we know he's got a lot more to give. Yeah, he played for the Rebels, and that might have affected him, just as it does some people and as it doesn't others. But anyway, I think that's probably common sense back three, boys. Any comments?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just about sort of Tom Wright, I think, was another sort of victim of just not being able to get forward. And if he needs to sort of find a way to inject himself in the game and show that type of form that he had with the Brumbies, and even those opening couple of games that just made him electric.
Yeah. Speaking of Tom Wright, where's Tom Banks? Is he still in Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Andy.
I was just going to say, I'm excited that Marika's back. I am frothing for that. I think I mentioned Kellaway the other week. after one of the tests. I was like, he was a little bit quiet out there, and everybody kind of screamed me down and said, no, he was everywhere. They just they didn't give him the ball when he was backing up. It would have been amazing if Korobetti and Dungunu were the wingers at the same time, because those guys they're so good. And I know Tom Wright's picked at 15, and this is again my Queensland bias coming in. We're talking about Tom Wright needs to learn when to inject himself into the game, but Jock Campbell, fullback for the Queensland Reds, my second favourite Queensland Reds fullback, but I don't know what he needs to do. Like, he's only a young guy, but he is an amazing player. Like, we've been watching him for a couple of years at Queensland, just absolutely just dominate that fullback role. And he played at 10 last weekend for University in Hospital Cup. In there, they scored 19 points in the last 9 minutes to secure a finals spot. And he did a lot of that, injecting himself into the front line in attack in that tour match against Wales, which I'll probably never stop telling people about because it was an amazing night. But look, that prototype of that fullback that is an amazing positional player, good defensively, great boot, and knows when to inject themselves in line, exists in Australian rugby, but he's turning out for University this weekend out at Sunnybank Rugby Union Club. So, look, solid back three. I think it could be better. Just my Reds bias showing through there.
Now, Nathan, is
pretty heavily.
Sorry, what was that, Nick?
Is Andy being silly?
I think Jock Campbell's a great player, but he's just behind people in the list. One person on the bench being Max Jorgensen. Like, I feel like it's one of those ones. It depends on what style of play you want out of your back line. I think Jock's great there as your second playmaker, 15. Like, the All Blacks have run the pass, but it seems like Joe is more of a sort of direct. Allow you 10 to be the playmaker and 12 and 13 distribute off that. That being said, which again on. To really kind of do that distributing a bit more, which I don't think they did as much last week. Jock's a quality player. It's just not the mold of 15 that Joe wants, which is, your explosive, like, game-breaking type player, like your Tom Wrights and Max Jorgensen has been named on the bench.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my feeling why he's got him in there. Like, Andrew Callaway, incredibly sensible. Felipe Daugunu, incredibly sensible player. So you need that one erratic player out of that. Electric, whatever you want to call it, Tom Wright.
Yeah. Same like just create shit out of nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Which he did against Wales when he scored that try from really deep. Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a no-brainer. And to Andrew's point, like, there's a lot of great players, but the thing that we don't really kind of get in Australia is we just go, it's a great player, let's play him. It's that, like, athletic mindset. If he can run good and throw a good pass, he can play. But Europe gets it. South Africa gets it. You've got to fit into all the parts. You've got to have that tactical mindset as well, which is probably, playing in Australia, it's a lot of running. Like, running rugby is what we want to play. And so I think kind of, it's unfortunate because there are a lot of great players that miss out. But, yeah. Shame.
That's the system they're in.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to my Jack Gordon comment. People are like, why is he kicking away? It's like, have you not seen the Joe Schmidt team? That's what he does. And also all the other benefits of that stuff. The rucks are solid. The hits are good. Anyway, quickly, let's wrap it up. Substitutes. Billy Pollard, James Lipper-Zanonga on the bench. Tom Hooper. Is he back? Was he on the bench before, Nathan?
Not for the first test, but has been on the bench before this year, I believe.
Yeah. And Sarah Uru, Andy, quickly.
Excited. Yeah, excited. another one of these brilliant players at the back end of the games when it does start to get a little bit loose and a little bit open. His ball running and ball distributing ability is up there with Harry Wilson, and he's a big body as well. So, but whether the game is going to open up or whether it's just going to be stifled again by the box, we'll have to wait and see. But excited to see what he can do. He gets a run.
Yeah, absolutely. Tate McDermott on the bench. We talked about him. Ben Donaldson. Actually, let's talk about these last two. Ben Donaldson, Max Jorgensen. How do we feel? Nathan, yeah?
I was going to say Max Jorgensen. I'm a big fan of. Like, I think, like, all the word coming out of camp is he is back to like full pace, matching it with the best out there. And when you consider those speeches in this Wallaby squad, that's exciting news. The question is just how good is he? Because we saw what he did against the Brumbies in that first game of his career, where he's just bumping off people and scored a double. Like, can he do that in the last 10, 15 minutes against South Africa? Because what I thought we were missing was a bit of pace and a bit of electricity coming on in the last 15, 20 minutes just to kind of change a game. And if he's at his best and he's overcome all these injury issues, like, he's going to be that player.
Yeah, as Waratahs fan, I mean, if we're going to play the Andrew card, I'm excited for him. I just think he's too young. And we have this thing where we get too hot for the next hot thing coming through. And then we ruin them. And they're gone. But Andrew,
that's a fair point.
Yeah, and I just think, we're playing South Africa, we got monstered. What do? We pick the smallest guy, Like when he was playing for the Waratahs earlier this year, it's like he just doesn't have that mass on him. Fantastic player, though. Andy.
Oh, but like you were saying, like we bring these guys in and ruin them. I'm glad that Tim Ryan, the junkyard dog, has sort of been talked about, but they're like, no, we're not going to pick this dude. He's played like 5 Super Rugby matches. He needs to go away and put on 10, 15 kilos, and just like, we will ruin this guy if we bring him in. So,
Always
a little bit.
Bring it back to the Queenslanders and how they're hard done.
When in doubt.
No. I'll feel for Max Jorgensen if he gets brought on and gets monstered, because we've had this bad track record of doing that to these. Yeah, we're always looking for the kind of the next exciting thing. Like, why don't you develop the players we've got in the positions that they already play, and not ruin them psychologically, like.
Yeah, like he did with Carter Gordon. Ruined him so much he went to rugby league.
Not just rugby league, the Gold Coast Titans. We've touched on this before. At least he didn't go to the Tigers, but still.
Yeah. I know, right? Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And he cut off his mullet when he went to the league, ironically.
Yes, right. And look, Donaldson has been serviceable in his tests. Again, it would be amazing if we had a 22 that could come on and just change the game. But we don't have a starting.
For the Kiwis.
Yeah, but we don't have a starting 10 sort of really locked down yet, do we? So it's probably a bit of a pipe dream to have a replacement 10 that comes on and then is even better again. But yeah, look. Good luck to Jorgensen. I hope he's not the next one that falls into this trap that we've set a lot of these poor kids.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, I think he's probably had 4 coaches at this stage, and they're all red hot on him, which is probably a good sign that he is the real deal. Okay, I think that's about it. The Wallabies play this weekend at 7:30 East Coast Elite time, which would be 5:30 West Coast time in Perth. Looking forward to this game. South Africans are playing their 8.5 team. They've rested 7 players, including Sia Khaleesi. I don't really think that will diminish the squad they've got. It's fucking amazing. They'd already beaten us like 15 minutes in last week. So anyway, all we can do is hope. And let's go the Wallabies.
Let's go, boys.
Sweet, done.
All right, Nathan, you can stop the recording.